Hey girl, you're tuned into the Grace Code podcast. I'm your host Lisa, and this is a show all about unlocking Jesus in the everyday. What's the everyday? Well, it's things like your faith, career, relationships, health, and so much more. I pray that this podcast leaves you inspired and passionate to find Jesus as you go about your everyday and encourages you to step out of your comfort zone and step into the things that God is calling you to. Hey girl, I'm so glad you're joining me today for episode 12 of the Grace Code podcast. I can't believe it has been 12 weeks since I sat in front of the mic for the very first time and shared my heart with you all. I'm so grateful that so many of you are on this journey with me. And if this is your first time listening, I'm your host Lisa. And honestly, I'm so honored that you would take time out of your day and tune into the podcast. So today's episode is part 2 of my Chronicles of a Serial Entrepreneur series. If you haven't listened to part 1, it's episode 9, and I break down all the essential ingredients that you need to start your own business. Now, when I say business, it can really be anything. You know, it can be that grand idea that God may have placed in your heart many years ago, or it can be that lack of a better term, side hustle that you thought about last week. So stop this episode right here. Go and listen to episode 9. Come right back. I'll be waiting for you right here. Now, in today's episode, I just want to touch on one of the things that can put a halt to all of our plans and give you some practical tips to help you overcome it. And that is procrastination. You know, it can be so scary taking the next step to actually start doing the thing that God's called you to do, to take action on the idea that you've been dreaming and planning about for months or maybe even years. You know, sometimes though we let this fear and overwhelm paralyze us. You know, it starts to actually set in and get the better of us. So we just stop and sit on our idea and the plans for a few more months until we feel like the perfect time has come for us to act on it. Then a few months later, once we've bitten the bullet and acted on our idea and we've put some action behind our idea, we wish we had started it months ago. Is anyone with me there? Like I can't be the only one that sits there a few months later after I've started something and gone, why didn't I do this months ago? So, does it sound like you? Because I can tell you for sure, I've been in that cycle so many times. You could say I'm well acquainted with procrastination. It's one thing to want to do it, to make the plans, write out those actionable steps, have the goals all written down and ready to go. But it's a whole other thing to actually step out and do it. It's scary, it's uncertain, it can be a bit risky. And that's why the best thing that you can do is to just start small with what's in front of you right now. You don't need all the bells and whistles or the most expensive equipment. You just need to start. So we know that, procrastination can come in a few forms. It can come through fear, whether that be fear of failure or even success. It can also be because you're a bit of a perfectionist. That was my problem, and it can still be my problem sometimes, but thank God for His grace and that He is working on me daily. So I was the type of perfectionist that would have endless to-do lists because every detail needed to be planned out and I needed to make sure there were no gaps for things to go wrong. Maybe you could say I was, at times, maybe I still am, someone who might like to be in control of situations. And let me tell you, it makes for some really fun chats with God, as I'm sure you can imagine. Now, because of my endless to-do lists, I often found myself overwhelmed to a point where I would never actually start. I'd rearrange my lists into top priorities, then rearrange them again and again. And by the time the end of the day would hit, I would have done barely any work for the day because I was so preoccupied with making my to-do list
perfect rather than actually doing what was on them because, I was so overwhelmed and I was a bit scared of the outcome of these tasks. Would they measure up to my own standards? Would I succeed? What happens if I failed? And, I'd barely get anything done. I was probably a bit paralyzed with overwhelm and fear and, would take me until like the very last minute. I would have to rush a task under pressure and stress because a deadline was due. So talk about being a procrastinator. Like, I feel like I'm the number one star of the show there, but it really wasn't a sustainable way to work. And I would end up being like burnt out, exhausted, and just didn't want to do what I was doing anymore. And so, it came to a point where I realized, I can't do this. And God really pointed that out to me. And so if you're a procrastinator, like the first thing we need to tackle is how to overcome it with time management. By scheduling your to-do lists into manageable time limited tasks, you can beat procrastination. I got there by the grace of God and you can too. So how did I do this? What was my secret to turning from a procrastination queen into a productivity queen? Well, as only God can do, he politely pointed out to me that, procrastination was a problem for me. And that took a while for me to actually accept and acknowledge. And sometimes my procrastination was because of fear. Like it was because of fear of failure. It was because of fear of success. And so I had to really overcome that. And second, I needed to develop a bit of a mindset around the urge to procrastinate. I would sit in front of the computer and start the day off, and I just had to tell myself, I can't follow the urge or desire to procrastinate today. Now, was I always successful at this? No. Do I still procrastinate? Occasionally, yes, but it's not as bad as what it used to be. And I no longer feel, completely overwhelmed and completely under pressure by the tasks that are set out in front of me. Now, to ensure I stayed distraction free, it was a mix of, spiritual and practical actions that I had in place. So number one, and this is the most important thing to do, is pray and ask Holy Spirit for help and guidance for your day. He really is the one that is going to get you over the line here because honestly, we can't do it in our own strength. So, start your day off with prayer, then start your work day off with more prayer and continue chatting with him throughout your day. Now, tell me, I'm not the only one this has ever happened to. One day I had this, what I thought was brilliant idea on how to manage my time, only to realize months later that this brilliant idea I had was actually a successful time management tool. To say I was a little shattered was probably a little bit of an understatement, but finding out that this was actually a really great time management tool allowed me to understand why this method was actually really, really helpful. And this is called the Pomodoro method. And if you've never heard of it, I encourage you jump on Google, look it up, read all about it. It's fascinating. And it's what I do to keep on top of my to-do list. So I found this method really helpful because, I broke up my to-do list into actionable 30-minute tasks. So I'd set a timer and intentionally work for 25 minutes, staying focused on the task at hand and only that task. And then the last 5 minutes would be a break. So then on every fourth break, I allowed myself to take a longer, 15 to 20 minute break. So I was working initially for 25 minutes, 5-minute break, and during these breaks, I would do anything. I would stretch, I would go and make a cuppa, I would walk to the mailbox and get some fresh air. It helped really curb my procrastination urge, as whenever I would begin to get distracted, I look at my timer and realize, you know what? I've only got 5 minutes of work left. Then I can look at Instagram, or I'll just push through because I have 10 minutes left and then I'll get up from my desk and stretch. Alternatively, if I was completely blank, and that sometimes is what drew me to procrastination, I would just be creatively blocked or blank with the work that I was doing, I would sit there and actually do nothing. Like I wouldn't allow myself to get distracted. I would have two options. It was sit there and stare at my computer or sit there and work. I wouldn't allow myself to pick up my phone, to walk away from my desk. It was sitting there focused for 25 minutes. Another way to think of this method is as interval training, so you set your task, set your timer, and if 25 minutes is intimidating for you at the start, set your timer to 5 minutes and have a minute break and then slowly increase from there. If you're in the middle of the task and you want to procrastinate and your break hasn't come up yet, you have a choice to make. You either sit there and do nothing, or you push into your discomfort and continue doing the task at hand. When the timer goes off, have your break. Then repeat these steps until your task is done. You can train for several intervals over 1 to 2 hours and then take a longer break at the end of it. And then you start the whole process again with the next task on your list. And that kind of breakdown is what really helped me tackle procrastination. So it helped me get a lot done throughout my day, and it taught me to push through the urge to procrastinate and ignore distractions that would come my way. Also, hot tip. Another thing that helped was popping my phone on Do Not Disturb. So I recommend doing that as well. I'd love to know if you've used this method before, or if this is your first time hearing about it. Try it and let me know how you go. So I think one thing we tend to do, because we're human, is celebrate our successes and hide our failures. But I just want to encourage you to celebrate your failures as well, as it's those that are going to grow you and help you learn. Time and time again, so many of us make the mistake that when we mess up, we give up because we end up discouraged. We give up developing the discipline in our life because we've failed. We think it's too hard, and this lie stops us from developing, period. Here's the thing though. That failure that you've experienced is actually a part of your victory in disguise. Failure means you've tried. It means that you stepped out and took the chance. You felt the fear and you did it anyway. It also means that you learned something about yourself that you didn't know beforehand. So don't let failure stop you in your tracks to success. Now, we know that discipline takes time. It takes courage, and it's going to take a few failed attempts until you get it right. And you know what? That's okay. No matter the result, take it as an opportunity to learn, to grow, and develop within that area of your life. If you fail, breathe, let it go, let go of discouragement and see it as a victory. Then get up, regroup, and keep going. You know what didn't work before, so adjust your perspective, adjust your routine, and try again. God's mercies are new every morning, and we need to take that truth and run with it. Today you may have stuffed up, but tomorrow is a new day and you can try again. So often something that can stop us is that we don't see ourselves worthy of getting the support we need. We believe lies about ourselves. So when we don't ask for this support, we put up a wall instead of a bridge. We block people out instead of taking the hand that is reaching out to help us. We think that if we show this vulnerable side of ourselves, people will run in the other direction. And that's an absolute lie. The truth is that when you show this side of yourself, people will love you. They will connect with you. They will trust you, and they will relate to you more than ever. So be your authentic self. Don't let Instagram be your highlight reel. Let it show all the facades of you. People are going to be drawn to your authenticity and vulnerability. Find the courage to ask for help. Find the courage to seek out an accountability partner to help you along the way, as you grow as an entrepreneur, as you grow as a small business owner. We need these people around us because they are going to be our support network. Let yourself be supported as you push through the discomfort, the hurt, and the frustration that you may come up against as you learn to build discipline in your life and as you learn to become an entrepreneur. As you learn to beat the things that might come up against you, like procrastination, and the things that might try to block you as you step into all that God has called you to do, let there be a support team around you. Life is not an easy journey, friend, and it can bring with it a flurry of different emotions, and you need that network to help you push through those lows and to celebrate with you on the highs and the success as well. And this brings us back to why it's so important to start small with what you have right now. It takes away the overwhelm. It takes away the scariness and the fear of, I can't do this. It's too much. So just start small. And that's how my journey started. My journey started small. It started with me just designing a few flyers for a friend's music event. I had zero design knowledge. I had no idea what Photoshop was or how to use it, but I was in the right place at the right time, and I put my hand up and said, hey, I'll learn and do this for you. And that started that trajectory of my design career. From there, I got engaged and married and DIY'd my invites, and people started asking me to do theirs. So this little thing that I had learnt actually became a bit of a hobby, but it was a hobby that people were willing to pay me for. Then that hobby turned into a small side business while I was working. And then, a creative role opened up in a store that sold wedding invites, and I decided to apply for that job. And I got it. Was the position what I expected it to be? No. But it taught me, more about design software. And, all this happened in the space of 2 to 3 years. So when I left that job after a very short period of time, I went on to study graphic design and focused on my side business, which then grew to a point that it ended up becoming a full-time job for me. I kept honing in and working on my offerings. So what started out as wedding invites for friends and family grew to an online retail store that sold greeting cards, stationery items, art prints, and I even had products in a store overseas. It blew my mind what God did with this business. And then I kept reevaluating. I kept, working out what I wanted to do with this business and worked on my offerings, and I started working with, female business owners who needed branding and website design. So why am I telling you all of this? Well, it's to show you that what started as my little hobby developed into a side hustle and then into a full-time job. And yours can too if you want it to. So just start small with what you have, where you are right now. It doesn't need to be as overwhelming and as full on as what hustle culture will tell you it has to be or makes it out to be. You don't need to be spending hours on end working on and in your business 24/7 over your weekends and losing your free time and your family time. You don't need to have the desire to grow your business into a multi-million-dollar company with you as the CEO unless you want it to. But if you do just want to keep it small, keep it manageable for you, keep it as a hobby that's there to, supplement your income, that's totally okay too. As women, we have a desire to contribute. It's in Proverbs 31. And we also have, this diverse range of goals on how we want to contribute with our gifts and talents. Some of us want to head up large companies. Some of us want to be in the corporate world. Some of us want to serve in full-time ministry. And some of us just want to serve in our homes. And this diversity that we have in our callings and in our purpose and in what we want to do is amazing, and it's totally okay. We need to stop letting the world dictate to us what we can and can't do and how we should and shouldn't live our lives. Whatever you choose to do and however you choose to live your life, choose to do it well. Choose to do it with excellence, displaying God through it all. The funny thing is we all start in the same place. We all start with a dream at the beginning of our journeys. We all need to go through the same few stages as such to, get to that CEO position if that's what we want, where we have a team around us. And, some of us desire that, and that's so fine. So I just want to break down those stages, and maybe you can think about where you are now and where you want to be and start dreaming with God about the plan and the baby steps that you need to make to get there. So stage 1, the what? So this is the conception stage. It's when the idea and the dream you have is birthed, or the talent and the gift that you have is discovered. It's discovering that there's actually something you'd like to do. It's the fleeting thought that, hey, I have this idea or this skill, and maybe, just maybe I might be able to make a little bit of extra cash on the side with it. It's the desire that comes with the idea of running a business, of having your own flexible schedule. It's the stage where plans are made, baby steps are written down, and the confidence starts to build that this could be something that you actually do. You've run the tests, you've gotten feedback, and you've run the tests, you've gotten the feedback, and your ideas really start to develop, take shape, and take off. Stage 2 comes into play then. A viable paid hobby. And I talk more about this in part 1 of this series. So make sure you go check out episode 9 if you want to hear about this one in more detail. But this is exactly where I started when I had friends pay me to make their wedding invites. This led me to starting my online shop front. And let me tell you, the night I made my very first sale and heard that little ka-ching from the Etsy app, I had a party. It was proof that, hey, this idea I had is actually viable. People actually want to pay money for what I was creating. It's the stage where you start to make some money from your hobby and the gifts that God gave you. And can I just say, it's not actually a bad thing to want to do this. Pastors get paid, and so should you. And let me tell you this, it's actually pretty exciting to get paid for something you do, especially as a creative. The even better thing is that it's low pressure and it allows you to start leveraging tools to find your customers. So this is where social media comes into play, and it's being that mouthpiece. And, as time rolls on, you can then decide whether it's something that you really enjoy, that it's your sweet spot, or you might be like, no, I want to try and make this my full-time business. So this is when you partner with God and you're like, hey, God, let's go on this adventure. Let's see where this is going to take me. Let's partner with you, God, and let's see this into something more. But remember, at this point, it's still low pressure, low risk, but it's still really rewarding. And I never considered myself an entrepreneur, and I still don't, to be honest. It's kind of the box that everyone else slotted me into, and so I just kind of ran with it. But running with it led me to open up my design studio, and now it's led me to step back into the design realm again with my new Etsy shop of faith-based art that is coming very, very soon. And so this is where stage 3 comes in. Stage 3 is becoming a small business owner or maybe a solopreneur. Now, in this stage, you have an official, viable product or service. You've proven that it can sell. You're serving your customers and you are actually making decent money from it. The demand for your product or skill is on the rise. Yay, celebrate. That's awesome. It's at this point that you have a choice to make. Do you decide to go all in with God and start outlaying a bit more money to set up your business? And that would look like building a website, working on professional branding, strategizing your products and your services, defining your customer experience and streamlining your workflow. Or do you just stop here and go, hey, I'm happy with this spot. I'm happy the size of my business. I'm happy doing what I'm doing. If you decide to move on, you work a little bit more on the business so that you can work more easily in the business. In this stage, your business is now starting to be more than a paid hobby, and you feel a bit more legit and might even consider making it your full-time gig. Like, it's at a point where you can make it your full-time gig. And this is then when stage 4 comes into play. This is when you're a legit business. People actually see you operating as a real small business, not just a hobby business. And take it as someone that had a lot of people view them as a hobby business. It can be super frustrating. but just keep laying it down back to God, because if it's his will, he will grow it with you, and he will grow it and lead you and guide you in the steps to take to make this something that you can work in full time. So at this stage, you've got a website, your business foundation is set up, and you have a steady stream of sales coming through. You're at a point where you actually need, a good team around you now. So you're paying yourself an actual wage. You're making a profit in your business, and you have the funds to employ someone. As your business grows, you're going to grow with it. You're going to learn, you're going to make mistakes, and you're going to iron out the creases you've found. You've tried and tested the true methods of what works for you and your business. But it's only going to grow if you want it to grow. Some of us don't want to get to this stage, and that's okay. Some of us really love the comfort and flexibility which comes with stage 3, and that's totally fine. The majority of us are all going to start at stage 1, thinking we need to get to stage 4 overnight, but you don't. So take the pressure off yourself. It's okay to go slowly and at your own pace. The most important thing you can do, though, throughout this whole journey is partner with God, because he will tell you when to stop, he will tell you when to go, and he is going to light your path. For many of us, we begin with this idea and we turn it into a paid hobby, but we fail. Some of us might leave it there and move on. Others might try again and keep refining our craft. We keep testing it and we keep pushing on because we want to get to that stage 4 CEO stage, and that is okay. Some of us are going to decide that, hey, this is my idea. I just want to leave it as a paid hobby while I work full-time or part-time or do something else as well. And you stay at stage 2 or maybe stage 3. And whatever you decide is completely fine. There's this pressure and expectation that comes as soon as we tell someone that we are starting a side business. As soon as we tell someone we have a product to sell or a service that can help them. It's like they expect us to be a CEO of a huge company with grand international success. And hey, if you want that, incredible, because that is such an achievement to get to that level, and I'm in awe. But if you don't, that's so okay. Take the pressure off yourself. Don't let anyone dictate or push you in a direction that you don't want to go or that you're not ready for. Let's remember we're all unique and we're all different. Maybe you're someone who is not business-minded at all, but you love painting and selling your artwork. Well, girl, let that be a hobby for you to enjoy. Not everything we do has to be a business. Who knows? You might do that for 5 years and then one day wake up and think, hey, I want to scale this bigger and make it a legit business. If or when that day comes, know that I'm going to be here being your biggest cheerleader, letting you know to go for it. I just want everyone who hears this podcast to know that whatever you decide, it's okay. And hey, if you don't have a side business, that's okay too. You don't need one. This is just out there for people that do. You don't need to feel the pressure to have something on the side of your regular job or your studies. But if you do want it, great. You don't need to feel the pressure to go from stage 2 to stage 3 or stage 2 to stage 4 unless you want to. Just do you. Honestly, just do you. If you are wanting to grow your business, just continue to leverage social media. Be that mouthpiece and put yourself out there. Continue to create, and you will find your customers who are willing to pay you for whatever it is that you are doing. It will be small and it will start off slow, baby steps. Remember, you will get there. It's just going to take time. So show up, start small, hone your craft, be ready to grow if you want to, and keep trying day in, day out. It will grow whenever you and God want it to. By making sure we are starting off small, it's actually going to be so helpful in the long run because it allows us to, fix the mistakes along the way and allows us to improve our processes and systems along the way. So in wrapping up this week's episode, I want you to know that I'm right there with you. I've just gone through stage 1. I've hit up essential ingredient number 2. I've sought my feedback and I know this is going to be a viable idea. So now I'm about to step into stage 2. So I'm right there with you, girl. However, these infancy stages bring on the nerves. And while you might not be procrastinating as such, you might be dragging your feet a little bit because you're unsure of the actionable steps that you need to take. So in part 3 of this series, I'm going to walk you through some actionable steps to take to help get your idea off the ground and step out and into what God is calling you to with faith, grace, courage, and wisdom. Now, that's a wrap on this week's episode. I hope you enjoyed it and are now able to manage your time a little better, as well as starting to think about and understand just where you want to go with your business. Thanks once again for joining me this week. Don't forget to share this episode with a friend and come and say hi to me over on Instagram at the.gracecode. Until next Wednesday, girls, have a beautifully blessed week.
Thanks so much for joining us this week on the Grace Code podcast. This show is made possible because of listeners like you. If you want to find out more about the Grace Code, head over to our Instagram at the.gracecode and say hello. If you haven't already, make sure you hit subscribe so you never miss an episode, and be sure to tune in next Wednesday when we drop our next show. Until then, have a beautifully blessed week.